Good morning. My name is Bruce Campbell. I'm the Executive Director of the Canadian Centre for Policy Alternatives. We're here to release a report on the planned procurement of closed combat vehicles. This is a joint project of the Canadian Centre for Policy Alternatives and the Rideau Institute. And Steve Staples, the president of Rideau, is with us today, as are the two authors. Michael Byers, who's professor at UBC in political science and Canada Research Chair in global politics and international law, and Stuart Webb, defense analyst and research associate with the CCPA and a visiting fellow at the Rideau Institute. So I'm going to turn it over right away. I just wanted to say that the report's in English. But Professor Byers will be able to take questions in French. So I'm going to hand it over to Michael Byers.
Thank you very much, Bruce. It's a great pleasure to be here with my colleague Stuart Webb. The government plans to purchase 108 close combat vehicles, heavily armed vehicles designed to accompany Leopard tanks into battle. Le gouvernement a l'intention d'acheter 108 nouveaux véhicules de combat rapprochés lourdement blindés pour accompagner sur le terrain les chars Léopard dans la conception remote à la guerre froide. It's a Cold War conception, and as Mr. Webb will explain, it has been transcended in other countries by modern doctrines of counterinsurgency. It's also the case that these 108 vehicles will cost a total of $2 billion. So these are very expensive vehicles, and it is our view that these vehicles are not needed in 2013. In fact, according to David Puglisi of the Ottawa Citizen reporting in May, the Canadian Army has come to the same view as we have, that close combat vehicles are not needed, not desired. They would like to use that money for other purposes, especially for training, at a time when the Army's budget has been dramatically cut back. On estime à $2 milliards les coûts de cet véhicule. À ce que l'on dit, les forces canadiennes ont affirmé au gouvernement qu'elles n'ont pas besoin et ne veulent pas des véhicules de combat et préféraient utiliser l'argent pour les autres fins. I will now hand over to Mr. Webb, who will go into more detail on this before joining him to answer your questions. Merci beaucoup.
Thank you, Dr. Byers, and thank you. Good morning. After the Cold War, the Army's mission shifted from preparing for a symmetric war with the Soviet Union to confronting asymmetric threats such as terrorism and insurgents. As part of this shift, the Army decided to retire its Leopard tanks. The Chief of the Defense Staff, Rick Hillier, explained in 2003, tanks are a perfect example of extremely expensive systems that sit in Canada because they are inappropriate to the operations we conduct daily around the world. 3 years later, Stephen Harper appointed a former tank commander as his first Minister of National Defense. Gordon O'Connor then ordered the tanks to remain in service. In September 2006, Canadian soldiers led Operation Medusa, an offensive aimed at retaking parts of Kandahar province under the Taliban control. More than 400 insurgents were killed in battles when they engaged the Canadians directly. O'Connor, thinking that the rest of the war would be fought in such a manner, deployed Canada's Leopard tanks in Afghanistan. He also acquired 120 newer tanks from Germany and the Netherlands, and sent some of them as well. This proved to be a bad decision. The Taliban soon shifted from stand and fight guerrilla tactics and adopted a new weapon of choice, the improvised explosive device. We've all become well aware of this, and the evolution of this device has continued on ever since the beginning of the Afghan war. Tanks have flat underbellies that make them vulnerable to these IEDs. The vulnerability is compounded by the fact that most of the armor is located on the sides and in the front sections, not underneath, nor is there a satisfactory solution to this problem, since the low-slung design of the tanks makes it difficult to add on armor and impossible to add a deflective V-shaped hull. O'Connor's error was exacerbated when the United States pushed a new field manual on counterinsurgency in December of 2006. The lead author was General David Petraeus, who was appointed the head of U.S. forces in Iraq in 2007 and the head of U.S. Central Command in 2008. Central Command includes Afghanistan, and this new Petraeus doctrine was implemented in both theaters. The doctrine calls for soldiers to engage with and support local people, so to erode any incentive they might have to side with the insurgents. It is difficult to win hearts and minds from behind heavy armor. When the Afghan government expressed a desire to acquire tanks, General Adam Finley, who then was the Deputy Chief of Operations for the International Security Assistance Force, stated, "We are making a counterinsurgency force, and we have Afghan partners asking for things that we would call high-end war fighting, tanks and what have you." He dismissed the Afghan government's request. But the Harper government, instead of moving away from heavy armor and towards a more modern counterinsurgency to meet future needs, is stuck in a rut that Gordon O'Connor carved out. It is preparing to spend $2 billion on 108 close combat vehicles that are designed to accompany tanks in conventional battles. According to the government specifications, the CCVs must be able to carry at least 5 infantry for at least 450 kilometers at a maximum speed of at least 60 kilometers an hour, and provide protection against heavy machine gun fire and IEDs up to 10 kilograms. They must be also equipped with a cannon of having a caliber of at least 25 millimeters. Remarkably, Canada already has such vehicle that can do all this and more, in the form of the 550 LAV-3s that are currently undergoing $1 billion upgrade at the General Dynamics plant in London, Ontario. These upgrades will extend the life of the LAVs until 2035. On top of the LAV-3s, the Army is about to receive 500 new, lighter and faster tactical armored patrol vehicles as a result of a $1.25 billion contract that was signed in 2012. All of this raises the question, why spend another $2 billion on 108 CCVs that are designed to accompany outmodeled tanks and in any event would add little to the Army's capabilities overall? The Army, to its credit, has reportedly told the Harper government that it neither wants nor needs the CCVs. It'd rather use these funds for training, and at a time when budget cuts are making it difficult to maintain a high level of readiness. In May, the Ottawa Citizen reported the Harper government was pressing ahead nevertheless, because it was worried about the cancellation would give it another military procurement black eye. According to the Ottawa Citizen, industry representatives have been told that a winning bidder has already been identified, and that winning company would be announced when it suits the Conservative government's public relations plan. The announcement may be imminent. Treasury Board, the Cabinet Committee, needs to provide final approval for the contract, is meeting tomorrow. Its members will also have to ask themselves, is it really worth $2 billion to preserve an illusion of government competence at the price that the Army cannot afford to train? Thank you. I believe we're going to be taking your questions now.
Thank you. And just to underline that the mistake the government is making on close combat vehicles is linked directly to the mistaken decision taken in 2006 by then Defense Minister Gordon O'Connor to send tanks to Afghanistan and to purchase more tanks also for Afghanistan. That was quickly proven to be a bad decision on account of the development of the improvised explosive device and then the dramatic shift in U.S. military doctrine towards counterinsurgency. These close combat vehicles that the government wishes to spend $2 billion on are designed to accompany tanks into battle. So this is a follow-on from a bad decision in 2006, which is why our report is entitled Stuck in a Rut. And as Stuart also emphasized, Treasury Board, which is a cabinet committee of the Harper government, is due to meet tomorrow. They have to give final approval on this contract. It is our hope that the government will listen to the Canadian Army and make the right decision and not proceed with this particular procurement. Stuart and I support the upgrades of the LAV-3s at the General Dynamics factory in London. We support the contract for light tactical vehicles that was given last year. We believe that the Canadian Army is right in wanting to have a broader and lighter footprint for counterinsurgency, that the Canadian Army is right that it does not need CCVs. Merci beaucoup. Any questions?
Yes. I'm just wondering, to me the report sounds like you don't want this $2 billion to be spent on these particular vehicles, but you would rather see that invested in training. Is that what you're trying to say? Because reprofiling money is not that easy in the government.
Well, I don't think that wasting $2 billion on close combat vehicles is a good thing to do, even if it would be difficult to reprofile the money. The Canadian Army is facing very severe cutbacks. It is cutting back dramatically on its training. The former head of the Army has said this to a parliamentary committee, expressed his severe concern. We would suggest that if the government wants the Army to cut back, it should cut back on unnecessary vehicles rather than necessary training. And yes, certainly the Prime Minister's Office, Treasury Board, Public Works, the Department of National Defense together could make that happen.
What if there was a circumstance where our troops were deployed again to an asymmetrical warfare scene? Do you think we would be prepared to respond to that without these CCVs?
Well, as Stuart pointed out, the 550 LAV-3s that are undergoing a very extensive upgrade in London right now will have the same armored protection against heavy machine guns as the close combat vehicles. They will have the same protection against IEDs as the close combat vehicles. They will have much improved traction. They will have the same caliber of cannon. They essentially have the same capability as the CCVs will have. They're very good vehicles. Their lifespan will be extended until 2035. There's no rationale for investing in these CCVs. That's why the Army has said they don't want them. This is an unnecessary expenditure. The Army's been quite clear. If there was lots and lots of money, they would take these vehicles happily enough. But in a time of steep budget cuts, it makes no sense to get something that is not necessary.
Finally, last question on those Army comments, not wanting this equipment. Besides the Dave Pugliese report, who else are you hearing that from within the forces?
If you do a news search on this, you will find several informed commentators referring to this as well, including a former general from the Canadian Army in a piece that was published a few months ago. I don't have it at my fingertips. We think that David Pugliese is a highly credible reporter on defense matters, and certainly his report was not contradicted at the time by the Canadian military. That was May of this year.
On another issue that the Rideau Institute has talked about in the past, the F-35, the Dutch government yesterday announced that they would be buying the F-35. They committed to it, their coalition government did, which includes parties from various parts of the political spectrum. South Korea is going to announce its decision next week and very likely will go for the F-35. Do you think that there is now some unstoppable momentum that could bring Canada along to decide finally that the F-35 is the plane for our Air Force?
Absolutely.
South Korea. Hello. South Korea has already announced that it's going to go for the Boeing Sound Eagle, not the F-35. That was a couple weeks ago. Dutch The Netherlands said that they're going to buy 37 of the F-35s, not the initial 85, because of the budget cuts, and they've also had some concerns over the capability in some of the Netherlands Auditor General's reports of their office. So it doesn't really change anything for the Canadian government.
I mean, the Dutch government is going ahead with the purchase. The number will have changed, but they're going ahead with the purchase.
They are going ahead with a symbolic purchase, but with 37 fighter jets, they will not have an effective fleet of F-35s. That is the key thing here, is that allies of the United States have been under a lot of pressure to stay with the F-35. Some of them, like the Netherlands, have made symbolic gestures but not fully equipped themselves with this aircraft. The U.S. military itself has reduced its number of orders. This plane is going in the wrong direction. And I would make the link with the close combat vehicles. Everyone knows that the F-35 was built for last century's wars. This is not a counterinsurgency aircraft. This is an aircraft designed to fight high combat type missions, and that's a pattern that we see continued with regards to militaries like here in Canada, where they're burdened by dated conceptions as to the equipment they need. And Stuart's absolutely right. The F-35 program, like the close combat vehicle program, deserves to be left in the 20th century.
The Rideau has also been critical of the entire Cyclone procurement for the Navy. There are other alternatives out there. Do you have a suggestion for what Canada should have bought or should be buying?
Well, again, we're talking about close combat vehicles today, but there are readily available, proven off-the-shelf helicopters that could fulfill the maritime helicopter role. The Sikorsky Seahawk, for instance, the NH-90, the AW-101, they're all available, they're all proven. They are therefore dramatically different from the Cyclone, which in many respects is still a paper aircraft. Est-ce qu'il y a des autres questions? Other questions? OK. Est-ce que je peux terminer seulement pour dire encore en français que le gouvernement dépensant 2 milliards de dollars sur les véhicules dont l'armée canadienne n'a pas besoin et ne veut pas. Ça, c'est l'histoire. Même l'armée canadienne a dit qu'ils ne veulent pas ce véhicule de combat rapproché. Et Stuart et moi, nous posons la question, pourquoi dépense 2 milliards de dollars pour des choses que l'armée canadienne ne veut pas? Merci beaucoup. Thank you very much.